1943. Warren McCulloch and Walter Pitts sketch a neuron out of logic and wire. Not flesh but threshold, not thought but fire. A model where mind could be reduced to switching states. And the idea begins that intelligence might emerge from gates. But even before that, long before circuits could speak, there were older dreams, persistent, antique. From Aristotle's logic to mechanical schemes to Leibniz, who imagined a calculus of dreams, a language of reason where disputes could be solved by calculation alone, where thought itself evolved into symbol and rule, into form or design, as if truth could be written line after line. Alan Turing defines a machine that can simulate all others in kind. Not a device of brass, but a concept of mind. A tape and a head, a rule set austere, and suddenly computation becomes something clear. Not just numbers, but any process we can describe, and with it a quiet, unsettling vibe. Thinking is process, and process is form. Then mind itself might be mechanically born. Alan Turing defines a machine that can simulate all others in kind. Not a device of brass, but a concept of mind. A tape and a head, a rule set austere, and suddenly computation becomes something clear. Not just numbers, but any process we can describe, and with it a quiet, unsettling vibe. If thinking is process, and process is form, then mind itself might be mechanically born. 1950, Turing returns with a question disguised. Not what is thinking, but can it be realized? The imitation game, a test of reply. If you cannot tell, then who are you to deny? 1956, Dartmouth Conference. The field takes its name. McCarthy, Minsky, Newell, Simon proclaim that intelligence can be described so precisely that machines may soon replicate it nicely. They build early systems symbolic and bright. The logic theorist proving theorems by night. General problem solver reaching for goals, as if cognition was sequences, steps and controls. And for a moment belief runs high that human thought is near to untie, that within a generation, perhaps even less, machines will rival human finesse. But the world resists clean abstraction. 1960s to 70s, symbolic AI holds the stage. Rules upon rules, knowledge encoded page by page. Expert systems rising with structured grace. Mice and diagnosing in medicine space. Yet brittle they stand outside their domain. A slight shift in context and they falter again. And beneath it all, a quiet divide between symbols we write and patterns that hide. Between reasoning explicit and learning unseen. Between what we declare and what might have been. Then winters arrive. 1970s, funding recedes, promises are met. Machines not yet thinking, at least not yet. Expectations collapse under their own weight, and progress slows to a skeptical rate. But close, not quite understanding, but more than verbose. A fluency emerging from gradient descent, an echo of thought without true intent. You ask and it answers, you probe and it builds code from description, essays from wills, a mirror of language refined to a peak, yet still just predicting the next word you seek. And here lies the question that lingers beneath, not in triumphs but just out of reach. Was intelligence always a matter of scale, of enough data and optimization to prevail? Or is this a surface, a shadow, a sign of something still missing, some deeper design? From logic to learning, from symbols to nets, from handcrafted rules to statistical bets, the arc of AI bends not toward a clear end, but toward a reflection we cannot transcend. Because in building these systems we start to see that intelligence may not be what we thought it to be. Not a single essence, not a defined core, but a pattern that emerges when systems explore. Enough of the world, enough of the trace of minds that came before and left their place. And so the saga continues, unfinished, unclear, each breakthrough bringing both progress and fear, as we stand in a moment both ancient and new, still asking the question Turing once drew. Not whether machines can think as we do, but whether our thinking was mechanical too.